Good morning, good evening to you, beautiful friends, wherever you happen to be in the world. I want to first and foremost just thank you for joining me this evening, where I am in the world. It has been a day, I tell ya. It has been a day amongst other things, and gosh, at this point, I am always so grateful for the adversity and the challenge. I really get the opportunity to practice what I preach and really, make this, heaven on earth as I perceive it, just through my actions, through how I choose to show up. And blessing and a curse sometimes, I tell ya. As someone who meditates often and tries to consider how my actions can be perceived, but then also that struggle of not necessarily existing for other people and not being so quick to crumble under everybody's observations. Um, what I like to believe are the healthy levels of narcissism, because it is a spectrum, and those that help you with resilience, coming back from setbacks, etc. But just also not coming undone at every instance of critique and criticism, because that is going to be our talk for the day. Does evil want to be evil? And this is why I work so hard to move forward in grace. So this is going to sound very strange, and something at one point I unpacked in therapy. But I think I mentioned reading, like learning to read from the book of Genesis. And I think I've mentioned like having such a love for God, and my faith and Jesus and his teachings. And yet there was always something in me that felt so wrong, that quite literally from a young age, like felt evil, so to speak. In fact, at some point, and I might unpack this manuscript, who knows? What if, and please understand, this is not like I'm running around and advocating for any particular school of thought or whatnot, but just some food for thought, especially because the devil, and a lot of people kind of get this misconstrued, the morning star, the Lord's most beloved angel, who allegedly, rebelled against the northern facing throne, as it can be taught. But what if so loved, humanity and God, and understood that it had to exist as the backbone, so to speak, the antithesis, because we live in this dualistic nature, this world, and wanted to exist and chose to serve the Lord, only to then be like hated and vilified in loving people so much to understand that, like, potentially they had to connect and meet and learn and only choose goodness. That's something that I struggle with a lot, to be honest with you, especially because, as an INFJ, if you are familiar, we have extroverted FE feeling. So, like large crowds, for example, can be a big one for me because, and it sounds very strange, but science is starting to substantiate this more. And everybody does to a certain extent, but absorbing energy and perhaps absorbing the energy that people might be feeling and not necessarily speaking on. And so, think about it, how each and every one of us has almost at one point in our lives had a moment to where maybe we've walked in a room and it's suddenly gone quiet. And we can't know for sure, but we can just feel tension. We can feel the thickness in the air, etc. So FE, that external feeling, is very present, for INFJs. It's quite literally as part of our makeup. And so I've struggled with this a lot. Like, am I just trying to make the world a better place because I'm potentially feeling some of this suffering, this chaos, etc.? And and then I realized that even if I couldn't, I would still want people to not necessarily be in pain, or to kind of understand and incorporate new techniques and new ways they might be able to potentially work on things. So, again, I think there is, to a certain extent, a certain degree of selfishness. I mean, i.e., I don't necessarily want to get rage murdered by triggering the wrong person, which, funnily enough, is kind of what even led to all of this, and even potentially feeling wrong and evil. I remember even as like a small child, I will never forget. And this is not to like trauma dump, but I do think it's important to like speak our stories and like our truths. So without particularly outing somebody per se, but speaking to things that happened. I couldn't have been more than like 4 or 5. And I come across a picture of someone in my life, although not presently connected with. I chose to remove this person because of how I view them and their abilities to communicate, etc. But at one point, at this point, I didn't have the opportunity to potentially not be dependent on this type of dynamic. So I saw a picture of this person. And mind you, I'm a child. I get it. It was rude. I was a mouthy child, what have you. But there was something in me. I thought perhaps it was like a picture of me. It was an Asian child. And I was just like, ooh. And it was a picture in a very in front of a dilapidated building, and it was in black and white, and the picture of the child just had a mean look on its face. And if you can tell, I don't have remorse about this. I was a child. I have now parented. I've been in similar dynamics with my own children to where there have been some really uncomfortable moments. They have said some things that just children, God love them without even meaning to, they can come for you. So I can only tell you that I essentially, like, I thought it was maybe a picture of me that I didn't necessarily remember, but then realized it wasn't me. I don't know. I was a smart aleck, and I just said, wow, this is a really ugly baby. This might be one of the ugliest babies I've ever seen. I'm a child. I'm a child. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying I was kind. I'm saying I just made this childlike observation. Only to turn around and have the person that I made this observation about behind me. And this person was an adult, and this person slapped the taste out of my mouth. Um, so much so that I can't even tell the story without not smiling, because as much as it is not cool in my esteem, in my feelings that it was handled that way, I still can't help. And this is not a good thing, even slightly. In fact, this is why I do not advocate for physical discipline. It makes little thugs. It kind of teaches you that if you can take a beating, that you can have whatever you want. Because even now I smile and I think, wow, I was such a small child and I had so much power already to like rock and trigger the crap out of this person. It's no wonder that as I continued to age, I consistently had trust issues with this person. How could I trust this person? They couldn't even technically emotionally regulate. And a lot of people might say, oh, you were a mouthy child, you were a brat, you deserved it. I would have gotten same thing. My parents would have done the same thing. My older people, any older guide, grandparents, whomever, my caregivers, hell, older sibling, any dynamic in my life might have potentially done that to me too, you little brat. And again, this is where I would say I was one of those kids that used to believe that, sometimes there were kids that until they got a butt whooping, they would not necessarily know when no means no. Except now as a parent, um, I have had my own moments where it's like, whoa, why do you need to flex on a child? Like, if you believe it's okay to make mistakes, we've got to find a way. You've just got to be committed to it and just continually try and rationalize and explain. And who knows, my children have not made it to adulthood yet. We shall see how that goes. I parent very differently. I do, absolutely. I've always kind of tried to find an age appropriate way to parent my children. I don't even know if I unpack this. I had a dream that I unpacked this, so if I got redundant, I don't make a point to go back and watch my videos, to be clear, because it kind of takes away from like the organic essence of it, if that makes sense. So it's like, even I might accidentally click or something, just because I have fat thumbs or if I'm scrolling, but I won't like sit and watch myself. But Santa Claus. So oh my gosh, this is what the video is going to be named, even though it only is briefly mentioned, because this is important. And I believe that we are all responsible for the beauty and the love and the energy, and we make this place what it is. So that being said, this is going to be like Santa Claus. Do not open, children, do not look at this. Oh, parents, monitor your children, not made for kids, all that jazz. And it's wild because it's not even how this was gonna become. I didn't see it going this way, it's sideways, but yay for authenticity. Um, so both of my kids, like, I made a commitment to not ever lie to my children, to find an age appropriate way to break things down to them, because I understood, probably through that particular encounter and just through instances with my parents, especially. Like, we're not going to unpack this, but clearly there's a lot that went into making me how I am. And a lot of that being my parenting or lack thereof in certain instances. My parents, God love them. I will say I knew I was loved, and I knew that I came from trauma, and I could see how my parents lessened the trauma. um, and yes, they broke some curses, some generational curses themselves, and left me with a lot of curses to continue to try and struggle to break. But before I get too sideways, I normally have this fun feature where I know how long my timer can go. I don't know, so if the video cuts off, I apologize. I just updated some things, and yeah, things are not as they should be. Mercury retrograde, these things happen. We will get to an astrology video, knock on wood. Our time is promised to no one, but I do have some immune issues, and my time is especially. We all know we're going to die one day. I might have less time than most people, and I'm going to make the most of it, by golly. So anyway, back to just even trauma, dynamics, parenting, trust. It was like the strangest thing, but I remember being like 6 months pregnant with my first child, and just having this strange thought, like, you know, kid, if I taught you that the smell of roses was the word fart, I could completely just rock your world. And for years, you wouldn't even necessarily know. And it really got me, like, in this weird headspace about how carefully I had to tread. So I made a point, because I always wanted my children to, if all else fails, it might not be pretty, what have you, but I could be like, hey, I did not lie to you, right? So at least I've always kind of tried to find a way to relate to you on your level. So, Jolly Chris Kringle, both of my kids thinking that they were Inspector Gadget, like a person of the streets, a drug dealer, as some people might say. First hit is free. And the first time they're like, hey, your writing kind of looks like Santa's, Mom. I'm like, don't know what you're talking about. And I didn't feel like I was lying, because I used my left hand. Or I would just, to be clear, just to make sure that is, I might have said, no, I think you're mistaken. Just something to where I didn't lie to them, if that makes sense, but just sort of tried to, like a magician, sleight of hand, steer them away from it. Second time, like, no, Mom, is my, congratulations, Santa. You're in on it now. Santa isn't just one person. Yes, I'm Santa. You're Santa. Keep the magic alive, and if I hear about you ruining it for children, we're going to have talks. It's a sacred responsibility. The joy of Christmas, etc. So, gosh, I forget where I originally had just been going, even with all of that, just the trust and shaping people's worlds, etc. But evil, even triggering, is what started all of this. I have actually quite literally been able to trigger people over comments of, like, vegetarian chicken nuggets. I kid you not. And I might have unpacked it at one point, but it was on YouTube. Yay. And somebody was commenting on KFC. And they were commenting, it was a post about someone just sharing about their experience about a person mad and berating a KFC person because they didn't have vegetarian chicken. And I get it. I am one of those people where you should not be berating people. But I'm also one of those people where, like, let's not make it about intelligence, because when we do, you're actually outing your own stupidity, i.e., Burger King sells the Impossible Whopper now. There are all sorts of vegetarian chicken options. And if you are, in fact, like the Chicken King, why wouldn't you have some vegetarian chicken options? So it's, again, for me, it's about not necessarily wanting to justify us being big old buttheads. And I have such a problem with bullies. And I really have to work on that. That way I'm not, like, bullying the bullies, right? But is it? Like, if I'm actually actively coming from a place of love and exercising a modicum of control, and quite literally not even like being mean to the bullies, but just like introducing some critical thinking, am I bullying anybody? Does evil? No, it's evil. Um, a recent one, most recently, there it was a comedian, and I loved it. It was actually very, very funny. But as ever, I like to pop on to remind because someone made a comment about, music artists. And I made a comment, and then it kind of became this comment feed. And people oftentimes will like cite me as pretentious. And it's literally projection. Because ironically, unironically, they don't realize it is pretentious as crap to, in the first place, take these stances. And when people do these things, when someone offers like a little bit of equilibrium or whatnot, it's interesting how like other people will then like mob and attack the echo chamber. So in this instance, it was talking about like music people, and someone's like well known, blah blah blah, and I'm typing, fingers of fury, and I misspell a word, I misspell pejorative, and this person pops on and is like, "If you're gonna be so sanctimonious and high and mighty, why don't you spell pejorative correctly?" And that is that is one of my biggest arguments. I understand the whole pseudo intelligence, and this is as someone who used to potentially be identified as like a grammar Nazi, because I used to do it too. Oh, there, etc. But also as somebody who has vastly explored communications, amongst other things, if it's not apparent, huge nerd core, even though I don't even like this core concept. Anyone that I have known that has subscribed to the word anything core afterwards has not been the most kind or integral person, but whatevs. Talk for another day. Doesn't mean they weren't trying, right? Forgiveness. They tried the best they could. So, um, just even in particular instances, you might want to spell it right. If you understood what somebody's saying, citing these things is quite literally weak, especially when you really take the time to consider biology, philosophy, and psychology has deduced every experience is individualized. We've discussed and unpacked this bit and everything, every video prior. What something is to you can't be the same thing to me, no matter what. I.e., a lighter, this lighter. No matter what, even when you say it's a lighter, that will be different to you because of who you are. But it's not just a lighter, it's, a source of heat. Could be a piece of jewelry, it could be a musical instrument. So, just all of these different things. Um, So when we even like subscribe to the collective as some sort of weird intellectual superiority, unironically, we are choosing to be so stupid because we are cutting ourselves off from so many other things. And it's interesting because I'm never actually like starting, like, I'm not trying to fight. I don't want to fight with anybody. In fact, funnily enough, it's actually me trying to bring to people's attention that, like, if they weren't so invested in these things that actually don't contribute to their well-being, their development, their progress, as much as they would like to believe. Like, it's funnily enough, it's not that deep. Our obsession with media, the way that we lodge at these things, because they can make us feel better, they can bring us joy in certain instances. They're also incredibly distractionary. It's like it's false. It's like sugar or any other substance. It's an addiction. You're not happy until you can actually be met with stressors and be okay with it. I.e., today I had comment feeds, I had multiple parenting. It was a day at work. I've been going through some things. And people might be like, yo, you're so bitter because you're here talking about this, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, I guess, because it's not necessarily joyful to be resonant and hold space for realities and whatnot. But I think that's where a lot of the work comes in, to like actually be okay with it. And I'm going to give you a great example. Oh my gosh, you guys, I have the best yoga technique. I'm just so peaceful. It is so peaceful. Oh my gosh, all the peace in my life. I'm so peaceful. Lady, maybe calm down. Don't drink so much of the energy drinks. If that's peaceful to you, oh no, that's peaceful to me. But you seem pumped. And, there is a modicum that super amped up energy, it's more peaceful than like, I just have the best example ever, and you should do what I tell you because what I'm telling you is so right. And we don't realize that in a lot of ways, and I have definitely been the worst. This is something that I'm just now actively like trying to use just some of this energy and conflict, for example, um, to just kind of sit and try to listen and be more present. To really try to understand where the person's coming from and to then even own it when I reflect it. Like, so am I hearing yada yada? Am I understanding? Am I correct in this? It gets tricky because to people that are triggered or in moments of conflict, sometimes even questioning, to someone who is perhaps in their moments and in their feelings, can again come off as very aggressive and antagonistic. But that's where it can get very difficult because, again, the emotional labor. Like, one person shouldn't always have to be calm and shouldn't always have to be the one doing a higher percentage of the slowing things down. Like, that is something that I can get very faulted for, and it really grinds my gears sometimes. Because if I'm getting into dialogue and I'm talking, you hear me talk. I've made videos. If you've caught this is your first, welcome, thank you. If it's not, welcome, thank you. I'm good with the words. So if I'm starting to get very short and clipped in my response, no. Well, you're this, you're that. I'm not myself. That's not me. That's not how I normally am. And perhaps you, other person engaging, might need to take some responsibility, step away, etc., and then potentially come back, re-engage. I shouldn't always have to be good with the words and calm and whatnot because I have that ability. And a lot of times in dialogue, that's one of the things people will often use to like try and condemn another person. And I find this a lot, especially someone who, again, I understand that in being very pragmatic, it can make people uncomfortable, but nobody has the right to say that that isn't loving, that it isn't loving for me to try, as someone who has had my own struggles, my own issues, even if you don't agree with it, even if you don't see it, like, you can't say this makes me feel this, like, you can own your part in it, if that makes sense, but you don't have the right to tell me what I'm doing, nor do I have the right to tell you what you're doing. I can tell you how your actions are affecting me. And we don't think about these things. We don't even necessarily think about the words that we're using and the nuances and the tone. And then it gets even worse because then we do these short clipped responses like, okay, what have you. I don't know. This, again, does evil know what's evil? Apparently, I am such a bitch. Pardon my language. And it's hard because as someone who is quite literally always like engaging or wanting to just cultivate thought, wanting to educate and empower, and sometimes having to get into that. And never thinking I'm above anyone, to be clear. The only reason I can even observe these things is because it applies to self. And I do try to speak on how it applies to self, even in my own ways. And then even that is triggering. Like, what's a girl to do? Because my gosh, it just seems like the things that are getting all of the likes are people pissed off or people telling you what's what. And I kind of suppose I'm doing the same, but I'm just trying to be clear. I'm telling you what's what for me as I see it. And I thank you for listening. And hopefully you can see how it applies and resonates to you. Because as different as we can be, we're human beings and we all do the same things. We just do them differently. That's where the individualization comes in. So, again, like, apparently my freaking evil arc, my villain arc has begun because I'm just trying to advocate for myself. And funnily enough, I'm trying to advocate for all of you. Because to not be able to be okay with it. Because again, like, I'm a bitch, apparently. I'm sanctimonious. I'm a know-it-all. I'm this, I'm that. I'm owning it. I'm trying to warn you. Don't necessarily take my advice. But just know I'm not necessarily even trying to control you. I'm not trying to change your mind, though of course I hope there is no way that your mind would not be unchanged just by sharing in this energy with me. And again, because I can only speak to certain things as they're resonating, it's why it's important to kind of share, create, etc. And you guys should be doing the same. maybe not on YouTube, what have you. But back to what I was saying just a few seconds ago before I got too sideways. So much of the media, it's just like, oh, these beautiful nails, oh, $9,000 sweets. I just don't see a lot of things that are making us think right or wrong or what have you. And you've got a big, beautiful brain, and I want to make sure that it gets stimuli, especially because with that, you are then getting tools even to help to learn to navigate your emotions. Because you deserve a healthy emotional regulation system, strategies. Goodness gracious, I'm struggling with the words. I didn't necessarily even plan on doing this. It was totally on the fly, but again, it's it just seems necessary. It really does. Because, we are all so quick to condemn. I mean, myself included, which is why I work on taking a step back. And even when this person's telling me what a piece of crap I am and this and that, even when I'm advocating for myself, like in this particular instance, I had to come on and be like, look, only way I can love you at this point is from afar. You're not necessarily even understanding what I'm saying. And for lack of a better way to put it, it was just how does one nicely say, you are stupid, and I'm not going to let you continue to weaponize your obtuseness and your ignorance. I'm not going to let you keep saying that because my words mean this to you, this is what it means. Just because there is a little bit of truth, that because you perceived it that way, that's how it could be perceived. I understand. You're speaking to the choir, sis. This is half of the time where, unfortunately, as an HSP, I'm having to work to self-regulate because I'm like, wow, it's very apparent you have not realized how this hits, blah, blah, blah. So that, for me, that is a big one. I always have to calm down when someone who is not necessarily demonstrating any of the capabilities that they're trying to call me out on, i.e., I'm a know-it-all. Look at you. You could have just scrolled on by. But something in what I said triggered you. But you don't even realize or own that this is still because of what you are interpreting and what my words mean to you. Because it wasn't a video, mind you. It's a text comment. Poe's law. Tone is implied by the reader. I have to check myself for this all the time. Man, I got an attitude problem. So I have to read and reread things like, wait a minute, are they blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, girl, calm down. Like, you totally misread that, dork. Especially having some struggles with dyslexia at times, I tell you. So it's, again, does evil know it's evil? I try to work on this and offer people their grace and forgiveness too. Because no, I don't think that this person is ultimately like the crappiest person, even though in that moment they choose to unload random internet stranger whose words trigger them, not even questioning per se what they mean, and assigning all of this meaning based off of what they're taking out of it. How does one even say that? And then, like, how does one even say, like, you're being dumb? I don't even mind. I do it too sometimes. Sometimes you just gotta walk away. And I did. And some might even perceive it as pseudily because I was just like, I hope that you have an amazing life. Reply all you want. I'm not going to respond to this anymore. I was commenting for critical thinkers and for people to think, seriously, like, have a blessed life. And then I feel like awful. I feel like, Southern, bless your heart. Because again, it's people are going to make it what they're going to make it. I will never forget, at one point, someone who I had to part ways with because in their trajectory, they were wanting to allegedly us work on having an interpersonal dynamic. I questioned potentially their integrity and the way that they were willing to be of the street, so to speak, connecting with any and anybody. And so it was ironic to me that they then tried to project and were just like, oh, well, have fun trying to get your likes and just pandering and blah, blah, blah. And, trying to become internet famous. And I'm like, yikes. Unironically, with you sort of selling out as I see it, allowing people to treat you any which way, not considering your effect, just trying to get popular opinion, trying to get people on your side versus me who just feels this need and just wants to just change energies and just get some dialogue going. If you say so. Though trust me, I don't necessarily think that I'm ever going to become, internet famous, and that's not the goal. I'm just trying to help empower and educate and remind you that we're all in this together. That, like I said, you have a beautiful brain and you owe yourself a healthy emotional regulation process system, a healthy nervous system. the ability to think, to not split and polarize your thinking, the ability to use your words because your voice matters. And it might not always feel like that. And hell, to people that I have made it seem like your voice doesn't matter. It does. I'm sorry that I'm still working on myself to not necessarily always be able to have the most patience for it, or to control my face, or to have it make you feel a way and then energies escalate and what have you. Because I don't think I'm perfect. I don't think I'm better than anybody. I think that we are all beautiful and incredible and messy and in pain and healing and thriving, and it is so complicated, and nothing is one size fits all, and it's not even everything hits the same way every single time, but it is such a beautiful journey, and we are making it the heaven and hell that it can be. And we are so fortunate to be here in these moments. So I guess just consider, is evil? Shit, ask my exes. I'm super evil. Not all of them. Some of them still reach out every now and again. On that note, speaking of astrology, this is your loving reminder that if any of your exes reach out, it's not to say that you don't have lessons that need to be revisited. It is to say that it might not necessarily be lessons that, I don't know, that will be permanent and lasting and resonant. Everything is exactly as it's meant to be. You are where you're meant to be. Evil, good, all of it. These are man-made constructs, which, funnily enough, going back to, I was gonna cut the video short, I was getting ready, but I'm like, nah, I still got the righteous anger in me. So and I might have even unpacked it, but just to retouch in case I meant to and then did not, and then went all sideways. Even in that, like, just the man-made constructs, the agreement, like, because I then made a comment like, go ahead and cleave to your what have you, and then this person wanted to try to cite me again. You can't cleave to anything. Perhaps you meant cling. And it was another instance where I wanted to be like, you are such an idiot. No, I meant what I said, cleave. You're fragmented. You keep wanting to fight. And yes, you are clinging, but I want to focus more on cleaving. And it was just very interesting. And again, not to be a butthead, but she was being a real twinkle stink. That's a me, co-creative original with another person. I am, because I don't like to dox people, I will just say my Cancer. Not actual cancer, but astrological sign Cancer. We at one point, we made up a few words. And because people do that, that's literally, it's how it's done. So even if the 1,000,001 people agreed and was just like, oh, you're wrong, blah, 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 words are interchangeable. That's kind of the whole point. And the English language, funnily enough, is one of the worst because of the way that we have taken different things and created American English, I should say. Just the rules that we have created, and then the way that we've butchered certain language like prefix, just roots, just, yeah. It's interesting. But I didn't want to get into the semantics, because anytime, again, someone likes to get into the intellectual superiority of everything, it's silly, especially because I'm not trying to make anybody feel dumb, even though eventually that's kind of what it comes down to, because it's like, wow, so I get it, you cleave to this, but that's like saying that, because the sun rises, we're good tomorrow. And not to be all doom and gloom, I think we've talked about this. So that 3-eye atlas is kind of cool. Technically speaking, if the sun were to like burn out, we would have like this whole gap, like 8.5 to 9 minutes, where we wouldn't even necessarily know. And to be clear, we don't exactly know what would happen. We could theorize, would the earth implode? What would happen truly? Would we just start to get like a nuclear winter type scenario? Would we have time? Would the earth just literally just start to disintegrate as we plummeted through the lack of gravitational space? And now that science is even deducing that we're coming from the black holes, etc. Man, such a great time to be alive. But HSP, again, funnily enough, it's very easy for me to find things to get angry or upset about if I so choose. But it's in that recalibration and reclaiming my personal power and choosing to find joy. And I tell you, there's always some mother trucker who's like, oh, I don't believe that. You can't be that calm. You can't be that happy. And then they just want to refute. And again, then try and like maybe if you step out of that slight grace or as graceful as you were, try to call you on it. Why? Evil doesn't necessarily know it's evil. What is evil? And talks for another day. We could talk about the ways that we justify certain instances, certain activities. And I can't help but see how a lot of times these activities are also done in other ways, and perhaps people are just looking for ways to target a different type of a particular action. That is like, unfortunately, like my blessing and a curse. Like you see that whole I will fight you for anything. I don't want to fight. I wish I didn't understand so much, because there seems to be something in, for lack of a better way to put it, when I can sense a clog, when energy is not flowing, something, when there's a blockage. And I think it's part of like the thunder medicine. And that might be something we unpack another day. It's something that I list in my bio, but it is also something that is observed in someone. It's not like I'm just like, oh yeah, I possess thunder medicine. It was observed in me, and that's probably literally the triggering the heck out of people. Heyoka, just all of that stuff. So, who knows? But on that note, to be clear, I'm not advocating for you to just go about and start being unkind and cruel and awful to people. It's really just more taking a deep breath and remembering that we're all kind of going through stuff. And a lot of people really aren't thinking of how they're affecting others and don't even necessarily care. And while it could be really easy to be like, wow, they're just evil. Are they? Does evil know it's evil? I've certainly, unfortunately, especially when I was younger, not thought so much about the ways, gosh, the people that I've hurt without even meaning to, people that I had no regard for. It's sad. Just, even people that maybe had crushes on me that I had no interest in and just ignored, or just didn't ever even have a conversation and engage in. Or, if somebody cut me off in traffic and then they got cut off and I laughed at them. And these aren't even like big things, so to speak. But then even ways where someone maybe has hurt me, and then I affirm them, been like, I hope you feel the pain that you have caused me. And I'm like, ugh, if you're meant to. Because even that, like, I feel bad. Like, I would never want anybody to hurt just for having hurt me. At the end of the day. And truly, it's sucked sometimes, but it's made me better. It's traumatized me in certain ways, to be sure, but that's also made me better. And I'm still here, and one day I won't be, and who knows, maybe one day I won't be because of someone who decides to want to change my mind. But I do hope that, a la Christ, forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. Like, how could you not? Because I do, again, just sense like the pain, just all of the discourse, the confusion in this world. So I guess this is just a call-in, the next time someone pisses you off. I'm working on it myself, but just challenge yourself. The minute we start dehumanizing people, we start to lose our humanity. We're all going through stuff. We've all been failed by certain systems in certain ways. All of us, every single one of us. And if we're going to find fulfillment and joy and love, true fulfillment and joy and love and peace, it starts with grace and understanding. Myself included. And that's why I come on and talk about myself and take ownership, for my own problems and kind of work it out. And then that way, on those instances, if and when I do re-click, or if it inspires something in someone and they want to have a dialogue about it, then, I'm reminded of these ways. Because it's okay. It's okay to mess up. Truly. And it's okay to talk about these things. It doesn't make people hateful, it doesn't make them awful. In fact, criticism, critique, just all of these things, critical thinking, these help us to be so strong and to be our best selves. So I'm loving you this day and always. And please just continue to grow, thrive, and be your best self, even in ways that doesn't look like to me. What feels good, what feels true, what allows you to want to be of service, to spread joy, to spread beauty, to spread love, to create this paradise. And maybe it's not the paradise you want. Why can't you make it that way? I'm trying. Might die trying, and I might not even accomplish it and get it to be the utopia I would like in my lifetime. But who's to say that I might inspire somebody so much greater than me? And who's to say that that's not you? Thank you for taking time to be here with me. I'm loving you this day and always. And please do not forget that we are always changing the world. Mwah.